Birth of a branch, establishing the Supreme Court. The United States Constitution, signed in 1787, established a new form of government. This government included three branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial. Article 3 of the Constitution created the Supreme Court. It outlined its basic structure and jurisdiction. However, the Constitution left many details undefined. The Judiciary Act of 1789 fleshed out the Supreme Court's organization and procedures. This act set the number of justices at 6. It also established the lower federal court system. The first Supreme Court convened on February 1st, 1790 in New York City, the nation's capital at the time. Early on, the Supreme Court faced challenges establishing its legitimacy and authority. The justices had limited resources and faced skepticism from some who doubted the court's power. John Jay, the first Chief Justice, struggled to assert the court's role in the new government. Despite these early hurdles, the Supreme Court laid the groundwork for its future as the ultimate interpreter of the Constitution. Its decisions would shape the nation's laws and impact the lives of generations to come. Shaping the nation. Early landmark cases. The early Supreme Court faced a critical task: interpreting the Constitution and defining its own powers. One of the most significant cases in the court's history, Marbury v. Madison in 1803, addressed this very issue. This landmark decision established the principle of judicial review. Judicial review gives the Supreme Court the power to declare laws passed by Congress and actions taken by the executive branch unconstitutional. This power is not explicitly stated in the Constitution, but is implied in the court's role as interpreter of the law. Marbury v. Madison solidified the Supreme Court's position as a co-equal branch of government. Another important early case, McCulloch v. Maryland in 1819, involved the balance of power between the federal government and the states. The court upheld the constitutionality of the national bank, affirming the supremacy of federal law over state law when the two conflict. These early decisions set important precedents for the Supreme Court's role in shaping the nation's legal landscape. They established the court's authority to interpret the Constitution and to balance the powers of the federal government and the states. The Marshall era, defining the court's power. John Marshall, the fourth Chief Justice of the United States, served from 1801 to 1835. His tenure is considered one of the most significant in the court's history. Marshall is credited with shaping the court into a powerful institution and defining its role in the American system of government. Under Marshall's leadership, the court issued a series of landmark decisions that strengthened the power of the federal government and established the supremacy of the Constitution. His rulings in cases like Marbury v. Madison and McCulloch v. Maryland continue to shape our understanding of the Constitution today. Marshall's court also played a significant role in shaping the relationship between the federal government and Native American tribes. In a series of decisions known as the Marshall Trilogy, the court defined the legal status of tribes and their relationship to the United States. The Marshall era was a period of significant growth and influence for the Supreme Court. Marshall's legacy as a brilliant jurist and a powerful advocate for the court's authority continues to resonate today. Section 4. The weight of equality, civil rights, and the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has grappled with issues of civil rights throughout its history. From slavery to segregation to LGBTQ+ rights, the court's decisions have reflected the evolving social and political landscape of the nation. One of the most infamous decisions in the court's history, in 1857, ruled that African Americans, whether free or enslaved, were not considered citizens and did not have the right to sue in federal court. This decision deepened the divide between the North and South and contributed to the outbreak of the Civil War. Following the Civil War, the court continued to grapple with issues of racial equality. In 1896, the court upheld the constitutionality of separate but equal facilities for blacks and whites, legitimizing segregation in the South for decades. However, the court's stance on civil rights began to shift in the mid-20th century. In the landmark case in 1954, the court unanimously ruled that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional, overturning and marking a major victory for the civil rights movement. Section 5, a nation divided. The court and social change. The Supreme Court has often found itself at the center of social and political controversies. Its decisions on issues such as abortion, affirmative action, and same-sex marriage have sparked heated debates and shaped the national conversation on these issues. In 1973, the court issued its landmark ruling in D, which legalized abortion nationwide. This decision sparked a national debate over abortion rights that continues to this day. The court has also addressed issues of affirmative action, which aims to address historical discrimination by giving preferential treatment to members of marginalized groups in education and employment. Decisions such as in 1978 and in 2003 have upheld the constitutionality of affirmative action programs while setting limits on their scope. In 2015, the Supreme Court ruled in that same-sex couples have the fundamental right to marry. This landmark decision legalized same-sex marriage nationwide, marking a significant victory for LGBTQ+ rights advocates. Section 6, the Rehnquist Court, a shift in power. The Rehnquist Court, named for Chief Justice William Rehnquist, who presided over the court from 1986 to 2005, marked a period of conservative resurgence on the Supreme Court. Appointed by President Ronald Reagan, Rehnquist was a conservative jurist who believed in judicial restraint and a limited role for the federal government. Under his leadership, the court shifted to the right, issuing rulings that often favored states' rights, limited the reach of federal power, and upheld conservative social values. The Rehnquist Court's decisions on issues such as federalism, affirmative action, and criminal justice reflected this conservative shift. The court's conservative majority often clashed with the court's liberal justices, resulting in closely divided decisions on some of the most contentious issues facing the nation. Section 7. The Roberts Court, navigating a divided nation. John Roberts, appointed by President George W. Bush in 2005, succeeded Rehnquist as Chief Justice. The Roberts Court has continued to grapple with many of the same issues that face the Rehnquist Court, including federalism, affirmative action, and campaign finance reform. The Roberts Court is often characterized by its ideological divisions. The court's conservative majority, which includes Chief Justice Roberts and Justices Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, often clashes with the court's liberal minority, comprised of Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson. These ideological divisions are reflected in the court's decisions, which often fall along ideological lines.